If you're anything like me, then you love being fast. There are so many games out there that allow you to become Sonic's dad and just warp speed through the level. For example, Titanfall 2, CSGO, TF2, Ultra Kill, Diabolical, Apex, Ghost Runner, and many more. Now, I have played and loved all these games, and they're tons of fun to play, except for you to be able to reach the speeds of a literal god, you need to have skill. Something I do not possess. I've attempted a few times to make some games with interesting movement, one of which is called Pacer and another which is called Impact. Both games had a lot of integrity when it came to movement. I'll admit the movement systems themselves were both garbage, but I spent a lot of time in them and they were actually pretty fun to mess around with. So anyways, welcome to me making a speedrunning game that doesn't require skill so that I can finally sit at the grown-ups table. Movement is going to be the most important aspect of this game. I want to be able to go fast, but I also want it to require just a little skill. And by skill I mean just experience on how to play the game. Some games can pull this off, while others just can't seem to understand how dumb people like me are. Let's take Krunker for example. In Krunker you have a pretty standard movement system, but it implements one really interesting mechanic. You may have heard of this term floating around in games like Titanfall and Apex, and it's pretty similar to what you might expect. It's most commonly known as slide hopping, but I call it tango dancing. This idea is you slide and then you jump, and you slide again as soon as you hit the floor, which adds a little bit of speed each time and helps you conserve your momentum. So if you do it right, you can get pretty close to seeing what it feels like to be an SSC Totara, traveling at max speed. So anyway, I wanted to have something similar in my game, where there is a mechanic that's easy to understand and easy to do, but hard to master. And once you do master it, oh boy. What I ended up doing was just denormalizing the movement and adding a small wall hop. In Unity, usually when you write controller scripts, you normalize the movement to prevent the forward and side vectors from adding up and making the diagonal vector twice as fast. But that's normalized movement. I denormalized it, meaning I didn't do that part. So if I go forward and side at the same time, it's really fun to do. And if you manage to keep it up long enough without running into things, you can do some crazy stuff. I'm not that great at it, but it's a lot of fun anyways. I added some other things in relation to movement as well. Like I said before, a simple wall hop with indicators showing when you're close enough to a wall to wall hop, and what direction it's coming from. I also added some bounce pads and some launch pads, and as well as some ice. The ice just lowers the amount of friction on the player and allows him to go faster and slide around. Pretty fun. But that's pretty much it in terms of movement at the moment. Next up, level design. If there was anything more important in the game than movement, it would be level design. The maps need to have flow and not have too many sharp turns or upward slopes so that the player can maintain their momentum without having to deal with too many hardships. The levels need to feel good to play, and there shouldn't be one specific part where everyone gets stuck and all of a sudden there's this infamous gap in the map that forms in your mind, and it demotivates the player from trying to beat the level because of that one part. This was something I really wanted to avoid. I really wanted to strike a balance in challenging difficulty and make each segment of the level just as hard or as easy as the next, so that everything stays equal. I started experimenting with these ideas in the form of my own version of the Gauntlet. If you don't know what the Gauntlet is, then let me educate you. At the very beginning of the campaign in Titanfall 2, there's a tutorial type area known as the Gauntlet, and it's essentially a little obstacle course used to get new players into the movement, and also for returning players to refine their movement skills and to try to get their best time. I really liked this idea and decided to try to make my own. So without further ado, here's my take on the Gauntlet. I also wanted to make a sort of hub area where the players would be able to gear up or practice between missions or levels. I call this area Zone 9, and eventually I want to be able to have an ability shop and a bunch of other really cool stuff around this area, but for now it's pretty empty and useless. So let's get into the aesthetics. I want to make sure that the levels have flow and fit together well with the movement, but also fit the aesthetic of the game. In terms of aesthetic, I'm not completely sure what I want to go for. I was thinking of either going for a sort of sci-fi neon type style with a low poly influence, kind of like Get to the Orange Door, or making a more low graphics one with a more retro style like Ultra Kill, or maybe even an obstacle theme like Fall Guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. But I'm pretty open in terms of style of the levels at the moment, so I haven't really bent in any direction. So the map I created to test movement out and run around is very basic and is in no way refined. It's just a bunch of cubes stacked on top of each other with some windows and occasional glow. I used Kenny's grid texture to give it a bit more interesting look, but I wasn't really trying to make it look good when I made this map. Mostly because based on the style I end up using, I could completely change it. Abilities, I want to categorize them into two classes: movement abilities and level abilities. Movement abilities would manipulate how the player can move around the level, and level abilities would change how a level works or how a level is played. Right now in the game you currently have two abilities, one for dashing, which can be extremely overpowered, and one for ground pounding, which I was inspired to make from Ultra Kill. The dash is an example of a movement ability, and the ground pound is kind of a mix of both, because it pushes the player down really fast, but with the ground pound ability you can break through certain surfaces and access new areas of the level as well. They're both still pretty rinky-dinky in terms of code right now, but they get the job done. The idea is that you would have a bunch of different abilities to choose from and be able to equip certain ones in Zone 9. I really only have one other idea for an ability, and it would be sort of like a phase ability, similar to the ones you see in Titanfall 2 and Apex Legends. Except while you're in the phase state, the time stops for around 3 seconds, and the timer for the level stops along with it. It wouldn't change your movement in any way, but it would stop time, giving the player a bit more time to finish the map, although I could see this ability getting out of hand, so I would probably cap it to 1 or 2 uses per level. But other than the phase ability, I don't have many other ideas in terms of abilities. So if you have a cool idea you think would be awesome to have inside the game as an ability, leave a comment and you might just get featured in the next devlog. So that's a basic summary of everything I've accomplished so far, and I can't wait to share more once the time comes. But for now, that's it for this devlog, guys. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever a new devlog comes out. And I'll see you guys in the next one.